turn on the news and you see some of those shootings have been our students and our parents. And I think having to help them cope with that and deal with that is just an added, plus they're trying to get an education and learn and come to school and, be part of programs at their schools. So they just have a lot of extra things that they have to deal with that the average student doesn't have to deal with.
Have you heard the saying, the opposite of addiction is connection? We at the Addiction Prevention Coalition know that there's truth in that adage. And so we are fighting addiction face to face, conversation by conversation, creating connection. Here at The Shield, our new podcast, no topic is off limits because there are no limits when it comes to substance use disorder. Welcome to The Shield. We are so incredibly excited to have with us APC Board Member and representative with the longest title in the history of the world from Birmingham City Public Schools. This is Sherri Huff. Say hello, Sherri.
Hello, everyone.
So your title, you're a program specialist for phys ed, health ed, driver's ed, and you're over the Let's Move BCS after school program.
That's correct.
Does that all fit on a business card?
It does. It does.
So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
How long have you, here's where I want to go. Have you always been a teacher? Have you always wanted to be a teacher? Like, were you that kid that when you were little, you were like playing teacher with your like friends?
Yes and no. I knew I wanted to work with children. I did not know I wanted to be a teacher because originally my undergrad is not in teacher certification, and I had to go back to school to get a teaching certification. But I found an article years ago in my attic that was from the Kaleidoscope, which was the UAB. That's where I went to undergrad, their newspaper at the time, and I was reading it, and they were interviewing me. I played basketball at UAB, and I said in there that I wanted to work with children. I wanted to be a teacher, and I was like, well, yes, to answer your question, I guess I did and didn't realize it.
Wow. So you played sports growing up?
Correct.
And so did you, when you were thinking about education, did you automatically think that you wanted to do like PE health, or were there other, just because, so I don't sport. Okay. I don't know how to sport, but I have a lot of friends that like, that's their vibe. That's their thing. And so for them, it was like a natural inclination to be like a health and PE teacher.
So I'm from Kentucky, and when I was in middle school, I had some phenomenal physical education teachers. I remember them like it was yesterday. Miss Hughes,
Aww.
Miss McEnroe, and two male physical education teachers, and they just showed us so much care, so much compassion, and maybe that influenced me. But again, when you grow up in an athletic environment and that's all you know, I guess you gravitate to that. So, but it's been phenomenal, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
And have you always been at the elementary level?
I've taught at the elementary level. I've taught at the middle school level. I have not taught at the high school level, but I've coached at the high school level. So I've worked at all levels, and I've also coached at the collegiate level, taught at the collegiate level. So
okay, way to slip that in there.
That's just graduate assistant work. It wasn't anything, like I'm the head coach. So, but it was
what, for basketball?
At UAB.
Wow. Okay, I did not know this. All right. So do you have a WNBA team?
No, I mean I don't really watch it. I'm not an avid watcher of the WNBA.
Are you more college or okay?
I like college.
Okay,
I like college. I prefer college.
Who is your team? Kentucky?
Of course.
Of course. My sister. So I told you I don't sport, but my younger sister, she played basketball all growing up. Like, it was a way for her to get moving, physically moving, but then also like to be part of something. And she would play constantly. She played club teams. She played, all like the traveling, all the things. And she had a chance to go to Pat Summit's camp one summer from University of Tennessee, right? And she came back that summer like a changed person. And now she has 2 daughters. They both play basketball. She's a coach. It's like they're big WNBA people before Caitlin Clark even.
Right.
But it's exciting to see, women's sports. And
it's grown phenomenally. And Pat Summit, we played them when I was at UAB. And then I also got to go to a conference that she was holding here in Birmingham. And I asked her, I remember them saying that when she was pregnant with her son, she made them turn the plane around so she wouldn't have her child anywhere but Tennessee.
Oh, my gosh.
And I asked her, was that true? And she said, yes, it was. So, she could do anything. I mean, she was a phenomenal coach.
She was incredible. Yeah. I mean, tough.
Yeah.
Tough. But so are you a tough coach?
I'm in the middle. I think today, I think you have to be a little bit different than they were back then. I mean, you could do a lot more back then than you can do now as far as, I mean, you can still push players, but I think you have to do it in a different way.
Well, so that's like a perfect segue, I think, because you are such a proponent of mental health and wellness, substance use prevention. Anytime we have a new program, you're like always the first person to raise your hand and say, let's figure out how we can do that in my school. So where does that kind of come from?
I just think over the years that if you pay attention to what's going on in the world, you know what children need, you know what students need, and it's different. I mean, that I don't know what other way to say it, but it's different now, and I think we need to be more understanding because back when we didn't have social media, we didn't have TikTok, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have all these avenues for children to get involved, and there are no educational tools that have taught them how to use these social media platforms, and I think that causes them to have to deal with things that they normally wouldn't have to deal with. Years ago we didn't have all that, and it adds to their confusion, I think, when they see things on social media. And as an educator and as a teacher, you need to help them see, well, if you make this decision, this is going to happen. If you make that decision. So I think we need to guide them and teach them differently than we did in the past.
I think that every younger generation kind of gets like, oh, kids these days, right? From like the older generation. And when people start sort of lamenting on our younger generation, oh, Gen Z, oh, Gen Alpha, blah, blah, blah. My response to them is, you clearly haven't been hanging around kids.
Right.
Because, yes, they have social media. And, yes, you couldn't pay me, by the way, to be 13. Like, in 2024, no, thank you. No, thank you. But they're remarkably resilient and smart. And a lot of the Gen Z folks are bucking trends. I was having this conversation the other day that like Gen X and millennials have held on so long to kind of being like for lack of a better word, like badasses, right? Like with substances or whatever, that the way for their kids to rebel is like to not do it. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's like now there's like kids that are like, nah, I don't really want to go to the party. I'm just going to hang out. And the parents are like, what? Yeah. Like, you don't want to go out and like party? You don't want to get your driver's license day of? And they're like, no, man, I'm good. Like, I just want to be. And like, it's like a complete pendulum shift. Are you seeing that?
that it's funny that you say that because, being over a driver's head,
Yeah.
they take the class, but then they don't want to get their driver's license. And I'm like,
Right.
I've asked them why. And, well, then I thought, well, they have Uber, they have Lyft, they have other alternatives to get them where they need to go. And I guess that's just not a priority right now. But, I mean, they eventually get their license, but they're just not in
They
a
take their
hurry to get
time.
them. Yeah.
Well, and they have social media, so they can still connect with their friends. Like, whereas we had to get our driver's license, otherwise, or we had to have our parents or our adults cart us somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we couldn't hang out with them after school.
Yep.
But it's really interesting, and it's leading to like they're just these younger generations are like bucking trends. Marijuana use is flat, alcohol use is down. But older people lament and are like, oh, this generation, they're so babied, or they're so bad. They're just vaping all the time, and like, I mean, it's not true. They're not doing bad things any more than we were. And as a matter of fact, it kind of looks like they're doing things less or maybe just different, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good thing. And again, it goes back to getting to know the population, getting to know the students. And, even though I'm in education, I'm not directly around students all the time, but I do coach still. And you have to listen to them, and you have to understand where they're coming from, because it is different. But it's a good different, I think. Like you say, they're not doing the things that we used to do years ago. But I still think they need the guidance, and I do know that a concern is there's so many younger people taking their lives.
Absolutely.
And I think
yes.
that we've got to get a grip on that. It's just
the mental health.
Yeah.
The mental health of our young people is, and not just our young people, but we're talking about young people. The mental health of our young people is, I'll say, more delicate or more fragile, but I don't mean that critically. And so that's why it's so amazing that you've put in so many mental health supports. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but y'all have adopted, you've had folks trained in youth mental health first aid, right? Are there teen mental health first aid? Yes. And so, I mean, and even, when we went into the elementary school the other day, we're weaving in topics about peer refusal and how do you kind of avoid getting addicted in the first place, and how do you talk to people that you care about when you're worried about them? That's all goes into the mental health piece.
In the QPR, I mean, we've done that as well, and I think
the question, persuade, refer, yes.
I think that is so important, and kudos to the person that started that, because I think when you sit in that QPR training, it helps you to know what to say to someone and that you could possibly help them.
That's right.
If you've ever been in that situation, it's like the QPR is going to help anybody to talk to someone that may be considering taking their life.
That's right. So how long have you been in Birmingham City Public Schools?
I taught there in 1991 and left and came back, and I've been there since 1996.
Okay, so a long time. Mm-hmm. So you've seen sort of trends, you've seen probably the population of the district grow and shrink and all the things. Could you talk a little bit about for lack of a better word, like the demographics of Birmingham City? Like, what are some of the successes that you see? What are some of the challenges that you see with that school population?
So we're a urban district, and we're 100% free and reduced lunch.
100% free and reduced lunch. Wow. Which means that 100% of the kiddos qualify for needing support with meals.
Yes. And I think over the years, I think we've had to find ways to keep our students engaged because they have so many outside situations that they have to deal with that, other students don't have to deal with, the shootings and, you turn on the news and you see some of those shootings have been our students and our parents. And I think having to help them cope with that and deal with that is just an added, plus they're trying to get an education and learn and come to school and, be part of programs at their schools. So they just have a lot of extra things that they have to deal with that, the average student doesn't have to deal with.
And the administrators are having to support the students who have some extra stuff on their plates, but I'll say it so you don't have to, the district is under-resourced because as additional school districts get created and the fracturing happens and people are choosing not to send their kids to one district and are moving to more suburban or more affluent places, then that takes the tax base out of the Birmingham City, right? So you're needing to do more with less.
Correct. I do think, though, I have to give the State Department of Education credit for adding mental health advocates in our schools.
That's incredible.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a plus.
So what does that look like? So does every school have a counselor? Does every school have a social worker? What does that look like?
I'm not real sure if every single school does. I know all of our schools have counselors. The social workers, I'm not sure if they're in all schools. I would think that they would be more so in our high schools.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that our counselors do a phenomenal job of helping the students with things that they need, like you've been to Epic, and
yes.
and they do a fantastic job of supporting the students. So I do know that that area, as far as the counselors are concerned, they've just been great.
What do you think is the biggest misperception about your students?
I think that they don't view them as intelligent. They don't view them as smart. But I'm going to tell you what, we have got our students are just amazing. I mean, they're resilient. They're so creative. And it's like, if you ever just sit down and have conversations with them, like we talked about earlier, I mean, this generation, they are very smart. Some of them are probably going to be entrepreneurs and just creating things that, we may need in the future, politicians. So I just think we do have a population of students that are misunderstood, and the perception is not accurate.
Yeah, I have to say, when I've gone I didn't know what to expect, right? And so as we're rolling out our school-based programs, first of all, I mean, you raised your hand right away and you were like, let's go. Every school I've been in, the kids, the students, the teenagers have been incredible. Everywhere from first grade, we were with some of those kiddos, all the way up to high school, and not just in your district, but in other, I would say, low-income, under-resourced districts where I heard from some people like, whoa. And I have not had one classroom management issue. Mm-hmm. I have not had one classroom that I didn't want to go back to. And I think you're exactly right. I think they are misunderstood. But I think the reason that you love working where you work, because you can see it when you talk about your students, is also why you like kind of prevention. It's like you're rooting for the underdog. Right? You're like doing the work now because you know it's going to pay off later.
And again, I mean, if you just come and spend any time in any of our schools, you'll see it's no different than any other school system.
That's right. That's right.
But you're right. Yeah, I like rooting for the underdog.
Yeah, yeah. Have you? One thing that I don't think we're past it, but I think we're definitely moving through it would be post-COVID and what we saw with kiddos in terms of learning and, behavior and just the connection and isolation. And I wonder where you think we are in the spectrum, because after we came back everybody tried the virtual learning thing for a little bit. That was a nightmare, particularly in under-resourced areas where half the people didn't have access to internet and, whatever. That was a nightmare. And then we come back and then we got to go back home and then we're coming back and then we're, it's disjointed. And then the first 2 years were a nightmare. And educators were fleeing left and right, retiring or going into banking or opening up their own shoe company or whatever, because they're like, get me out of education. I wonder where we are now. Do you think things are settling down? Do you think behavior is getting back on track? Learning, where are we at now?
I think we are getting back to some normalcy. I know the children that were in kindergarten, first grade, I believe they're probably in the third grade now, fourth grade. I know the teachers have said that there has been a difference in those children that were at home during their really crucial and important
formative years,
yes, right? That they've had to work a little bit harder to get them back on track and get them focused and get them in some kind of structured organization. The teachers that I've talked to, they think that they're getting there. I think there's a little ways to go with those students. But yeah, I mean, you're at home for almost 2 years and no structure, no organization, and then all of a sudden you're thrown back into a brick building and you've got to sit in your chair and you've got to listen and follow directions. I mean, it's been tough.
Well, and we're still reacclimating on the adult side. So how would we, why would we think that kids aren't going to have trouble reacclimating? I mean, exactly. There are places that are still struggling with working from home and what that looks like and productivity and all of those things. And so obviously you're going to have kids that are used to doing whatever they kind of want.
Yep.
And then now you're having, as you said, sit in a desk all day. Yeah, of course. But I do think we're coming out of it. There seems more hope in the school year this year. The last couple of years, it's been a little hit or miss.
Yeah. But it goes back to the mental health aspect. I mean, we've got to address those issues, and we can't push them under the rug, and we've got to hit them head on, and work through it.
Yeah. So, is there any initiatives, besides the ones we've talked about, of course, from APC, but are there any other initiatives that are happening right now that you're really stoked about, in your district? Or programs or cool things that are happening?
As far as health education, I just know that we have some phenomenal health teachers. I know one of our health teachers, he's taken a field trip, and this really isn't based upon mental health or anything.
Sure.
But, they're going to go to Washington and New York.
Get out.
Yeah,
cool.
So,
but it is tied to mental health, right? Yeah. Because then the students get to see a world that's bigger than their backyard. They get to see possibility and opportunity. They get to see, and they get to understand that a educator believes in them, and that's awesome.
And we have a nutrition component that a lot of our high schools are working on with their students' wellness and what to eat,
cool.
So we do have some things going on that are beneficial for the students.
Yeah. What have I not asked you that you're I really thought you was going to ask me this question? Is there anything that on your way here and when you almost walked out that door, you were I know she's going to ask me?
Not really anything in particular. Just we just have a really great school system, and I just want people to realize that, you know, from the outside looking in, you know, you just need to come join us and see what we're doing. And the teachers that we have, they go above and beyond, and they're so passionate about what they're doing, and they don't get the credit that they deserve.
And let's be real, you would have to be passionate and dedicated and resourceful and root for the underdog and care. Because if you didn't, I mean, they're not in it for the paycheck. They're not in it for the glamour. Like, they're still showing up when so many folks who were dedicated and passionate left in droves after COVID. They were like, peace out. This is for the birds.
Yes.
The teachers that are still there, it's like you just want to like give them a big hug, right? And I'm not even a hugger, but you just want to be like, thank you for like continuing to show up. And that's really like in any school, but particularly in areas that are misunderstood, I think.
You know, and the after school program that we do, I mean, just to see how the children enjoy being able to participate in something that's organized and structured, and they have fun, and the teachers are there. Their parents come out and support them. I mean, again, this all goes back to your mental well-being and, you know, being physically active, and it just all comes together. And when you see how much fun they're having, I mean, it makes you just want to keep doing what you're doing and supporting the students.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. If you like what you heard, and I know you did, please consider rating and reviewing and subscribing to The Shield. Thanks, Sherri.
Thank you.